Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and welcome to the stage Lieutenant General Bob Shea, President and CEO of AFCEA and former Joint Staff J6.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed the break, and this afternoon's plenary session, Leveraging Technology Joint Requirements, is going to begin in just a second. So, as a reminder, any questions that you might have for the panelists will be taken electronically. You can email or text your questions to the askmemilcom@gmail.com address up there, okay? All right, well, it's my pleasure to introduce today's plenary panel moderator. You heard him talk yesterday afternoon. He was the keynote speaker to our opening luncheon. I don't think at this point in time he's been out there on the floor, so Mark shouldn't be any stranger to any of you now. So without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce today's plenary moderator, Lieutenant General Mark Bowman, the Joint Staff J6. Yours, Mark.
We wish we had more people here to talk about leveraging technology for joint requirements. In the end, it comes down to the actual requirement. We've got a panel here of 5 6s from COCOMs, all with a different lens that they look at the problem through. The problem that we have is interoperability across DoD and with our coalition partner members. It's interagency, it's whole of government. We've got requirements, we know what they are. So what we're going to do today is each of the 6s will give a 5-minute pitch on what they got going on and some thoughts. Then I got guidance, ask 3 questions. So we'll ask 3 questions after that, and then it's open for you guys to quiz us. And there's 2 of us on the panel that have spoken earlier, myself and John Wilcox, and we're not afraid to tell you we don't know. So with that in mind, we'll start with John.
So it sounds like we're hot now. Okay, first of all, I want to thank folks for coming out. Certainly thank industry. I thank you this morning. Thank you again for what you do for our community. Our operators could not be successful without the new kit and the new capabilities that you're providing to our SOF warriors. Speaking of them, that is our focus. SOF is very much a people-oriented force, and our people, the folks we focus on, is our SOF operators. So it's really the disadvantaged user, that distant end. And as I tell anybody who will listen, but my boss really gives me a mandate that when we want to provide capability to our SOF operator, it really comes down, I boil it down to a broadband SIPRnet, VTC kind of capable connection anywhere on the planet to any operator, including just one. If we send one person to an embassy, we send one person to an LNO position, or we send one person on a singleton operation, they're going to have broadband SIPRnet wherever they go. That's my mandate and my task to my folks. Do we get it all the time? No, but I'll tell you what, we get it there 95% of the time, 98% of the time, and the goal is to 100. And so you can help me do that. So I lay that out up front because we build our network from the operator back to garrison. You know, anybody can do a lot of things on a gig backbone. It's when you have a soda straw. And actually, it's not quite a soda straw anymore. We're putting a pretty good capability in the hands of our operators. But when you have a disadvantaged user and you want to give them enterprise services, that takes some innovation, some ingenuity, and you can help us with that. But we engineer our capability from the operator back to garrison, full voice, video, and chat. My boss wants to build a VTC with that E5, sergeant somewhere on an operation, and so that's our task. What we're working on now, kind of give you a flavor from a requirements perspective, is, everybody's heard of the Joint Information Environment. Well, our SOF information environment, our SIE, is the SOF extension of the JIE. We believe in the JIE framework. There's a lot of things that make sense from an enterprise perspective. There's some things that don't, and we have to figure out what exactly those are. But we're moving out smartly right now on a single SOF domain with a single sign-on globally, which I have interpreted as what kind of the JIE means to the common user. So now when one of our operators or our commanders or our J3s leave Tampa, leave Fort Campbell, leave Fort Carson, and go to Bagram, Manila, Columbia, and Entebbe, they take their same CAT card, their same SIPR CAT card, they plug it into the machine downrange, and they get exactly the same desktop they have in Garrison. That's been the dream we've had for a while. Well, right now we're seeing that. We're almost complete with the SIPRNet. John McLaughlin's done a great job fielding that. We're working on the NIPRNet. But that's really the vision of the JIE, and we're seeing it on our segment right now, and hopefully we'll extend it to the rest of the department with some of our lessons learned. We're also obviously very concerned with net defense, CND. Got a great team in the headquarters in Tampa, because we centralize a lot of our CND operations there because we can't afford to put CND experts all across the battlefield. So we do a lot of the work from home station. We leverage our CNDSP Tier 2 provider, which is Disaconis. And then, quite frankly, we have a great cyber component support out of MAR4 Cyber. MAR4 Cyber is our supporting command for cyber, and they have fielded their first CPT to our headquarters, and they sit on the network every day right in SOCOM headquarters, and I can't say enough about how supportive MAR4 Cyber has been on that. For industry, we got a number of things we're competing right now. Most people know about SciTech 2. Our enterprise contract is SciTech. Our next generation is SciTech 2. We're working on those RFPs and RFIs right now. Plan to award that for implementation 1 April of 17. That'll be a big deal for industry. Encourage you to partner with people and figure out how to do that. As Mr. Gert said over lunch, we're going to leverage the Alliant contract to do that. So start forming your teams now. We're also buying new radios for SOF. 15 years of war have kind of wore us out. So we've just awarded our handheld contract, but our ManPack contract's coming up. That'll be, again, we use radios a lot, so that'll be a good opportunity for industry to partner with us. Over the last 15 years, SOF has become very dependent on airborne ISR, both full motion video, sensor data, ELINT, SIGINT, all the INTs, but primarily full motion video. And one of the things we're championing across the department is that the need for a airborne ISR transport network, because it's different from a typical data network. Industry, you can help us by not promoting stovepipe systems, because quite frankly, we're wasting a lot of money with every airplane has a separate GCS, separate transport segment, separate modem, or different modem. That's not helpful. We're promoting a department-wide capability so that those ones and zeros can be petted anywhere they need to be petted, whether it's back in CONUS, whether it's at a GCC, or quite frankly in the footprint of the UAS, or the manned aircraft, because it's not just UAS, it's manned, ISR, and unmanned. So I could certainly use some help on airborne ISR transport. Then lastly, the world's going mobile, and SOF is no different. My task to my team is we want to make SOF 100%, or should be 85% mobile by 2020. There's some things that don't lend itself to a mobile environment, but we think that a SOF operator, a SOF support, SOF enabler, SOF commanders can be most effective if they're mobile, SIPR, NIPR, and ultimately TS, and we think we can get there by 2020 about 85%. So that's really what SOCOM is working on. My boss, General Votel, calls the network his number one critical enabler. SOF operations would not happen, would not be successful without a robust network. So that's what my team strives to provide, and quite frankly, we get great support from our commanders. With that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
All right, good morning. Colonel Mike Moyles. I'm the Chief of Information Technology at NORAD and USNORTHCOM. Our mission set was teed up perfectly by Lieutenant General Bowman because it's not just joint. If I look at the topic and say it's leveraging technology in the joint environment, that's a very myopic view for USNORTHCOM. That covers one of our 6 presidentially chartered missions. To do the other 5, I have to look coalition, and I have to look interagency. So if you're not familiar with our unique mission set, NORAD is a binational command. That's a little different than a geographic combatant command that needs to share information with a host nation or pass intel. They are fully integrated in every respect with our command. So our commander is a Navy 4-star, our deputy commander is a Canadian 3-star. The NORTHCOM J3 is an Air Force 2-star, the NORAD J3 is a Canadian 2-star. We have 4 branches in the Information Technology Directorate, which is an Air Force 05, an Army 05, a Navy 05, and a Canadian 05. So just to do day-to-day staff work, we have to think and operate in a coalition environment, and that gets very difficult and presents some tremendous information technology challenges. I will tell you, for the hundreds of the Canadians that are in the building, they can barely sit at their desk because they have 4 CPUs underneath their desk. Canadian classified, US classified, Canadian unclass, and US unclass. And getting data transferred from one domain to the other can be tremendously difficult. And more on that in a moment. Because our challenge doesn't stop there. For our theater security cooperation and our defense support to civil authorities missions, 2 of the 3 missions that are chartered to U.S. Northern Command, we operate with over 40 interagency partners. You can think back to our good friends Patricia and Joaquin who have visited us here recently. You can think back to the worst wildfire season on record and realize that day to day we operate with the FAA, with FEMA, the American Red Cross. If you look at our theater security cooperation missions for counter-drug and counter-narcotics, we're operating with Customs and Border Protection, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, DEA, a list as long as your arm of over 40 interagency partners, mostly federal, some NGOs, but all non-DOD. So how do I share information with them? If there's a significant event, for example, a domestic terrorist attack, there's actually an ops center inside NORAD NORTHCOM headquarters that has seats for FBI, CIA, DEA, CBP, ICE, FAA, FEMA, the Red Cross, and as a CTO, I purchase and pay for commercial internet connections for everyone because I can't put them on our network. How do I solve that problem? What this means is that for 5 of our 6 chartered missions, we have to think beyond joint. We have to think coalition, and we have to think interagency. And of course, we have a 7th mission that's largely unadvertised. Does anybody want to try to guess it? Santa. We have to keep track of Santa. And for those of you who think that this is not an important mission for NORAD, it's right up there with missile defense. And I will admit with some shame that last month we lost him for a couple days. During an unscheduled power outage, we actually didn't know where Santa was. We found him, rest assured, but the case remains. The interagency and coalition is how we live day to day. What types of technologies can we apply here, or what types of technologies are interesting to us from an industry perspective? Think about multi-level security or cross-domain security. Is there a way I can take some of the burden off of our Canadian partners such that when he sits down at a classified PC and puts his CAC card in, it knows that he is foreign military and automatically filters no foreign data so that he is not exposed to a security risk? Is there a way to work with tunneling or private enclaves or something like that where I don't have to have 4 separate networks for 4 separate classifications in 2 separate nations? And by the way, we just took on Mexico and the Bahamas and the Arctic. These are tremendous technology challenges. Are we getting data labeling right? Because MLS, multi-level secure, and cross-domain filtering requires us to get our data labeling right. What about rule-based or role-based access controls so that they know when foreign military officers are logging in and they label the data appropriately, filter the data appropriately, and can exchange data appropriately? Had an interesting conversation yesterday with a DISA representative talking about something called adaptive encryption, which was new to me. where you can actually encrypt different portions of the message with different keys. Some of those keys would not be present on a Canadian CAC, so that he could not decrypt no foreign data. He still gets the same message, but the no foreign portion is not decrypted. These are the sorts of technologies that would be interesting and applicable to the types of missions and challenges we face operating day to day. So it's about those types of technologies that would make our lives easier, both operating within the headquarters and overseas, securing our borders, or helping the Mexicans secure their border. What's been interesting is they are just as concerned about their southern border as we are about ours. In fact, most of those who come across our southern border with malicious intent probably came across their southern border. So we went down to Mexico, I was there last month, to see how we could help them patrol their border better, communicate better across border agencies, learned that not how do we get their radios to communicate better, they didn't have radios. They didn't even use radios to communicate among their border patrol agents. So think 20 years back. That's the sort of assistance and technology that we need to use. So at NORAD NORTHCOM, we've learned that we can make just about all of that work, and that there are some tremendous technologies out there that can make our lives better. As long as we don't lose Santa, we should be fine. Over to Colonel Moelter.
Good afternoon. I'm John Moelter, and I'm the J6 from Southcom. So first of all, we're not SOCOM. And we're not here at Tampa. We're in Doral, Florida, just outside of Miami. When it comes to resourcing the 9 COCOM, Southcom usually comes in number 11. So we are resource constrained. Southcom has 3 joint task forces, just for a little education. The first is Joint Task Force Bravo. It's a forward station in Honduras and gives us that forward look in response time for any HADR type operation that occurs in South America. Next, we have Joint Interagency Task Force South in the terrible place of Key West, and their mission is to conduct the counter-narcotics detection and monitoring. Finally, we have Joint Task Force Gitmo. They're, of course, at Gitmo, and they're responsible for the humane treatment of our high-value detainees. So I have basically 3 areas that concern me, that are challenges, and where we're looking for assistance. The first is cyber readiness. Okay, we need tools that don't require a EE degree to operate. Most of the tools we have today require sophisticated contractor assistance that we just aren't going to be able to afford. We also need help in developing a cyber COP. We've stood up the JCC under our G3, and we have to integrate the J6 DODN, Defense of the DODN responsibilities with the JCC's cyber operations. Finally, we need patching tools that don't leave 10% of our workstations to touch labor. I just can't afford that amount of labor every week. My second area is network management, maintenance, and modernization. Today, operating a network is just too hard. Many of our, again, the tools we use are harder to operate than the network itself. When I came in the Army, the network was ran by E4 specialists. Today it takes, again, EE majors, multiple certifications, and highly skilled civilians, contractors, and warrant officers. About 5 years ago, Southcom moved into its new headquarters building. So what that means today is we have a whole bunch of equipment that's reaching life cycle. So we need to modernize and not just replace old equipment with old technology. Finally, my third priority is partner nation engagement. Just like NORTHCOM, we have many countries who are more resource constrained than Southcom. Countries like Haiti, Honduras, El Salvador. So we need small, low-cost solutions. Often we have requirements to share classified information with our partner nations in support of the counter-narcotics mission. To do that, we often have to provide network capability. And it's usually at the size of 2, 3, maybe 4 workstations to a single facility. So I don't need a $150,000 solution. I need a $10,000 solution. The countries also need help with basic radio, everything from FM, HF, and single channel TACSAT. Of course, most of the nations in South America don't have their own satellites, so they rely on commercial or U.S. support. They've been asking for help in cyber and network training. One of the last countries I visited about a month ago didn't even have basic user-level workstation computer training. And I've already talked about the need for a beyond line-of-sight radio solution. So that's Southcom, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Kelley.
Here we go. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Kerry Kelley. I'm the J6 at STRATCOM, and I'm the Chief Information Officer, and I'm also the Director of the Joint Cyber Center. So just touching a little bit on STRATCOM's mission. So the broad sense of our mission is basically to, in coordination with other combatant commands and government agencies, be able to detect and deter strategic attacks against the United States, our allies and our partners, and then be prepared to defend the nation as directed. So with that scope, it's clear the interoperability is key in order for us to be able to work together across the many different partners required to enable that mission. Typically, we are a supporting command, so we would be supporting to a regional combatant command, and as our mission statement suggests, when it involves the homeland, we automatically also think of NORAD NORTHCOM. So what are some of our key challenges? One of the areas we're really focused on is at that national level, what's called national leadership command capabilities. So how we communicate and provide decision-making quality information, not only to the commander of strategic command, but on up through the national level leadership. So as we do that, and given our mission sets, I'll just maybe dwell on space for a second. So space is one of those global mission sets that has been assigned to STRATCOM. When we look at what's going on in space, and obviously it's congested, contested, and competitive, and you can think towards 2007 when China launched an ASAT, test ASAT, and made the whole orbital constellation more congested. Or even more recently in the news, you can read about a Russian satellite that's performing some maneuvers. These are sorts of information, pieces of information that we need to bring together to help decide, help present basically the 5 W's, what, why, when, where, and what's next, and who, to decision makers to help provide that context and tee up potential options. As we look at that environment, we are faced with putting together not only DoD JIE sorts of pieces, but it crosses into interagency, as in what the intelligence community is doing with eyesight. So this is a challenge in trying to break down some of the system-centric and sensor-centric forms of data to be able to provide decision quality information. It's also challenging in terms of large data, big data access and search. How do you get to that information quickly and improve the analytics? It's how do we develop and implement a more resilient network architecture across the DoD as well as the intelligence community and other government partnerships, and collapse some of these disparate security domains. It also brings us to platform agnostic, so mobility is key. You don't know where the particular senior leader may be. They may be in their office, but they may be mobile as well. So high-quality information in this sort of environment. Another area that we're focusing on heavily, talked about by Colonel Moelter, is the cybersecurity. Absolutely on the how do you present cybersecurity situational awareness, how also do we broaden even more the situational awareness beyond NIPR and SIPR to some of the mission systems that are absolutely essential for our operations. Similarly, we have a new command and control facility that is underway, being built, beginning to do IT install, and that will take up quite a bit of our bandwidth here over the next couple years. We are also in that endeavor looking at some increasing virtualization and having more consolidated desktop infrastructure to help us get at some of the collapsing of the domains that I just talked about. And then finally, we're very focused on what I'll call more of our legacy mission set, so the nuclear command, control, and communications, and how we ensure a smooth transition from legacy to some of the more modern systems that we have coming down the pike. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Pete Gallagher, the CENTCOM J6. We're actually, as you know, we have two COCOMs here at Tampa, and we are HAPPYCOM. John is my battle buddy over there at SATCOM at SOCOM. But what I would tell you, General Bowman and I, as we were coming in here, we were discussing kind of what the layout of the room was going to be and about how many folks we were expecting. And he had a thing that said about 1,500 people, roughly. And as we look out here, we kind of figure everybody, after the lunch session, they went to see Ozzy and Justin Bieber in the other room because SOCOM had a special panel or something going on over there. But anyway, in CENTCOM, just for what it's worth, most of you know, the only thing that's keeping us from being 11th on the priority list is we have a few conflicts going on in our little part of the world. As you know, we have 4 ongoing conflicts right now where people are actually shooting at each other. We've got Iraq and Syria, which is our #1 focus to counter Daesh, ISIS, ISIL, call them what you want. It's the purest form of evil that is a threat to our national interests, and it's a threat to our way of life. And what we're doing in our theater is about separating that threat from the American homeland. We've also got the Afghan-Pakistan ongoing conflict. It's in a pretty good situation right now, but there's always potential for that to change. And then, as many of you know, a few months back in February, we evacuated our embassy in Yemen, which is one area where Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, one of the most well-versed Al-Qaeda affiliates, was operating out of. When we evacuated our embassy, shortly thereafter, the Saudis started a coalition to go after some of the Iranian-backed Houthi influence on the ground inside Yemen. So there's another ongoing conflict there, and we are still working the counterterrorism piece in Yemen from a distance. But we are supporting the Saudi coalition with a joint planning coordination cell led by a Marine 2-star. And then we've got the conflict with Iran. And Iran is a conflict despite the fact that we have a nuclear agreement. That doesn't mean, peace and love is going to break out in the Middle East. There's a lot of concerns across the region. So in this very, very complex environment, what we need at CENTCOM is simple, secure solutions that allow expeditionary forces to have enterprise capability at the edge. Okay? That's a mouthful. If you think S3, E3, it's really simple, secure solutions that allow anybody flowing into our theater to have access to the enterprise at the very tactical edge, whether that's in a hotel room, in support of a special operator or a special ops commander somewhere in one of our partner nations, or it's in the Hindu Kush or on some, remote airfield. So we're working through that. That's the task to industry, is to help us get there from here. Some of the areas where we're really trying to get after it is, our #1 priority is uninterrupted mission command, not only for General Austin, but for every one of our component commanders and leaders that are in the fight. So how do we get to uninterrupted mission command? For us, it's about optimizing what we call the C5 ISR network And we do that through basically a 90-day cycle where we bring everybody together, we figure out what we've got to do, we take a look at what we can fix immediately, and we try to roll up our sleeves and get after it. And we also look towards what is it going to take to get resources and set the theater to make sure we're aligned with where General Bowman and Mr. Halverson are trying to go with the department. Back when Denny Moran was in my seat and General Bowman in my seat, there was a CENTCOM theater architecture, and anybody that came to the fight had to comply with the theater architecture. We can't operate that way anymore. We've got to adjust our theater and be able to absorb the enterprise and be able to set the conditions. So everything we're doing now is trying to align with the JIE, and we're trying to operationalize MPE. And what is MPE? That's the Mission Partner Environment. For me, that is my number one focus right now, and it's what our team is working hard to do. We need an enduring mission partner environment that allows us to connect with our coalition partners at phase 0. And we're not there yet. 14 years of war, and we stand up a new coalition, and we still got to build another network. As General Schoonmaker used to say, I don't want to build the railroad, I want to buy a ticket to ride. As a COCOM J6, I don't want to have to build a network every time I go out the door. I want to connect to the enterprise. I want it to be delivered in a way that's simple, secure, and it allows us to take that enterprise to the edge for those expeditionary forces as they come in. So we're working this really hard. You know, General Bowman talked about the cross-COCOM requirements. There is nothing we're doing in CENTCOM alone and unafraid. We are partnered and joined at the hip with John Wilcox. We're joined at the hip with Pat Dedham and AFRICOM because our threat spans both CENTCOM and the AFRICOM battle space. We're working with Welton Chase and the folks over at UCOM because we're operating out of Turkey, operating in our battle space, and now Russia's in our battle space. So we have a lot of complementary efforts, and we've got to work together. In all things related to Pakistan, we are working with our PACOM partners because on the other side of Pakistan is India, and that's always a friction point. So we've got 5 COCOMs joined at the hip and moving forward in what we've defined to be the requirements for what is a mission partner environment at the secret releasable level. The only reason we don't have every COCOM on board with it is because we didn't have time to staff the memo. As it emanated from UCOM, we all kind of came together and determined, based on our cross-COCOM requirements and the current fight we're in, we got to use what we have available to us now, which is OCO funding, Overseas Contingency Operations funding, and invest that smartly and not make it a one-off solution for the current fight, but use it as an investment to an enduring MPE capability. And that's what we're really trying to do. Again, I don't want it to be a CENTCOM or SOCOM unique requirement. I want it to be a Department of Defense solution that allows us all to connect. So no matter where the next crisis is, the services can show up and connect because they have common standards and that enterprise environment's available to them. John mentioned cybersecurity. I'm also the director of our Joint Cyber Center. And really, it's about, number one priority is effects, that uninterrupted mission command, but obviously making sure we do that in a way that's not going to compromise our network. Our number one priority in cyberspace is mission assurance. If you've watched things unfold over the years, whether it's been the most recent cyber incidents that have happened or back during Operation Buckshot Yankee, sometimes there's a tendency to want to play cyber defense like little kids soccer. And the entire cyber apparatus can get involved trying to solve one problem. What we've got to be able to do collectively is isolate the problem, fight through the problem, and ensure mission assurance for those folks that are out on the edge and they're in harm's way and bullets are actually flying. We're putting steel on target, and we have to protect the force. So being able to fight through that and mitigate and do everything we can to keep the network operational while you isolate and eliminate the threat's pretty important to us. The other thing, is this coalition interoperability is not just about a mission partner environment network where, it's an IT network and we can share mission command tools and everything else. It's down at the tactical level. The ability to interoperate radios. We've got a lot of partners that have gone direct commercial sales, and they got radios that are equipped with Type 3 encryption or not encrypted at all. We've got others that have gone through the Foreign Military Sales Program, and they have Type 1 encryption. And sometimes our mission partners don't understand why we can't get these radios talking to each other. So we're working through with some of working with some of our partners and working with NSA to try to find some solutions to help us bridge that gap. And I would ask all of you, if you have a dog in that fight, and you can be part of that solution to lean in and provide your solution set. And most importantly, the last piece is being able to do this in a way that's efficient. The investments we make now are sustainable, so when OCO funding does dry up and we no longer have a crisis on our hands, we can sustain this through the palm years. Certain things that are part of the enterprise get rolled into the rates, and it's sustainable for the future. And I probably exceeded my 5 minutes.
You did. So next on the agenda is for us to come up with 3 questions. The first one is building upon what a couple of the guys said about ensuring that we don't have a mission partner environment that is flavored by COCOM, that's looked at through a COCOM lens. In the big scheme of things, we on the Joint Staff do requirements and facilitation, services execute, and OSD does policy. We look at requirements in a different way. The J8 runs requirements for the Joint Staff, but the Functional Capabilities Board that covers cyber and comms is run by the 6. The guy who runs it is an Air Force 1-star. He's an operator. He's a bomber pilot, and that's by design. Our requirements need to be defined and run by somebody who's an operator who gets it and understands it. The reason is that they will ask the questions that cause people to go back and do some more homework without coming up with a parochial solution. So, to restate the question, how do we ensure that we don't come up with an MPE that changes flavors or shades or type as it transitions from one COCOM to the other? Pete, why don't you jump on that first?
Sir, thanks for the opportunity. So I think we're doing that now. A few months back, if you looked at the plan for MPE, MPE was a concept. And people were saying MPE is not a program, it's a concept. And as our team looked at it, it was mapped out to 2020 and beyond. And it was about PowerPoint deep. There were some thoughts in it, but there was no implementation plan. There was no forcing function that's really going to get us there. And we realized, as we tried to build another railroad to connect another coalition, that this is crazy, okay? That there should be an enduring fight tonight capability, and that's when we brought the 5 COCOMs together. And we really, as a forcing function, they did send a letter from all of our deputy commanders to Mr. Halverson. Should have gone to General Bowman as well. It did not, but I pushed it to him as soon as I got a copy of it. But the intent there was to get Mr. Halverson on board to really try to force the issue with his governance responsibility to get us there from here. And let's use the current crisis. And we brought everyone together and we identified what are the key things we must have, what are those mission requirements, and we call them the duty dozen. It's things for whether it's email or chat or collaboration, common operational picture, voice, video, all the things that we must have to operate in a mission partner environment, and identified about 12 things that we all collectively agreed upon that we are going to need. And then we're looking at how do you converge the investments we've made to date through things like data center virtualization, being able to collapse networks and be able to episodically manage enclaves on the fly. So I think we've got a lot of work going on right now between the COCOMs and with the DoD CIO and Joint Staff in the lead. They've done a lot of work with all of us. They've had several sessions since that letter was delivered, and they're really trying to get after an implementation plan to deliver something by the end of FY16. And so I think we're moving in that direction, sir. And I don't think any of us want to have COCOM unique requirements or COCOM unique solutions anymore.
John, you want to jump on that, or Kerry?
Sure, sir. So, first of all, it's got to come quick. The longer you take, then the more opportunities guys like me have to build my own solution. And I'll build it just to meet the commander's requirements. And then I think it needs to be modular in what services it provides. We have a number of solutions that are headed downrange provided by other than the signal community, but they're Cadillac solutions. They're VTC, their voice, their portals, their email, and some countries just don't need that and don't want it and can't manage it. So in some cases, it may be they just need a secure telephone. So when my commander, General Kelley, calls up the MOD for Haiti, he knows that he's talking to him and nobody else is listening in. So maybe that's where in some of our countries, where we need to start. The other thing is it's got to be simple for the partner nations. When I was in Korea, before taking this job, Centric's network was huge. It's everywhere. In the U.S., it goes down to the battalion, sometimes the company level. On the Korean side, it only went down to the corps level. And then we, USFK, wouldn't allow the Koreans to maintain it and manage their portion of the network. They paid for half of it, but we wouldn't let them touch the encryption devices or any of the network because we were too scared that something bad was going to happen. We just can't do that. So those are my thoughts, sir.
Okay. So why don't we jump to another question, and then I'm sure some of the folks will pile on with other thoughts. So how do we ensure that we stay on point with the requirement and we don't continually morph this requirement? We keep it to what it needs to be. We agree collectively to drive toward that. And any of the desirements that come out of people on how to do it better need to be on the bottom of the list of stuff to do. So, John Wilcox, you got some significant thoughts on how much of the requirement actually needs to be met before we field it. So why don't you start that?
Thanks, sir. And I've talked to some folks in the industry before. One of the things I think, and Hondo talked about it at lunch, SOF stays flexible and agile and pretty cutting edge because when we go to the requirements process, we fully state our requirement, but we're willing to accept the 85% solution, and then and buy now, limit the development, buy now, and then come back to the marketplace in 5 or 7 years or whatever the proper time is to get the additional capabilities, or we buy a capability that can spiral into a advanced capability. I think sometimes, as we build a requirement, we decide, I'm only going to get one bite at the apple, so I need to get 100% right now. And we all know that every time you add that 1% towards the 100%, it doubles the price or quadruples the price and delays the project. So I think we have to be a little more reality-based. Say, let's look at the 85% solution, get that, and we'll come back at a later date. So that's kind of my thought on that. State the requirement up front, but get what's available today on the marketplace. Industry does a great job of providing the capability. Let's use that. Don't ask them to stretch. And we've all seen programs where we've had to cancel them because the technological risk was unbearable. So.
Thanks. And Kerry, based on your experience with your new headquarters building, maybe it would be good for you to touch a little bit on how the requirements jumped around on you.
Yeah, well, I think, it basically requires a lot of requirements discipline. Yet you have, like was talked about at lunch today, the requirements discipline, but it's finding that sweet spot where you can still introduce new ideas, the pace of change of technology, and how you can incorporate that in is really the thing that's very difficult. So with our new building, the Good Idea Ferry had to cut that thing off, and then you go out and we've got Spaywar as our government IT engineering lead, and now they're out, doing the final source selection. So I think it is a challenge. I just think that you do have to impose that discipline, impose the governance, and then follow through and keep abreast of the technology, so then you can kind of figure out, okay, when would be a next drop, for example, if you want to use that terminology, to help upgrade or do something different. Stick to your plan and then build in those bridges.
Thanks. And to jump to our third question, we're going to go to Mike. Mike, can you talk about challenges that we got right now that, in your mind, we aren't meeting, and how we can get help?
Sure. I touched on a couple. And I think every panelist up here has hit on the mission partner environment or the need to operate in a coalition and an interagency environment. I'm not sure we've got that right. And I think to even answer one of the prior questions about how we keep from coming up with stovepipe solutions is we have a combat support agency, DISA, that develops enterprise solutions for us and has stood up a mission partner environment office to help us with this problem. And I'm not sure they've got it right. So this is, I think, a significant challenge that every one of the COCOMs up here has articulated to some degree or another, whether it's operating with special operators in the field or operating with Canadians in Colorado Springs, or operating with disadvantaged nations in Southcom or elsewhere. Being able to operate both interagency and coalition, in my view, that's the biggest challenge that we face, and I'm not convinced from the Combatant Command Support Agency, from the DISA perspective or from the Combatant Commander's perspective, that we've got the right solution yet. So that's at least one example.
I'll throw two challenges out to industry. One is, I mentioned earlier that we are pretty dependent on full motion video, and we started out with SA quality. Now we're at HD quality, and we all see the 4K televisions in Best Buy. Soft operators want the clarity, and quite frankly, they need it for certain mission sets for PID. So. But that all drives bandwidth. We've all heard things like Gorgon Stair, where we're going to be pushing more and more sensor data and over the network. So I think a sweet spot is we've gotten pretty good compression, but I think there's more room to run in the compression space for all you scientists out there, all you engineers out there. Help us figure out better compression work for both video and other forms of data. So that's one. Second one is, technology is now, everywhere, and every operator. As I mentioned, we have over 1,100 nodes deployed around the globe. Every soft operator is a user, a consumer, but not every soft operator is a comm guy. And so simplicity of operation. Pete mentioned it a little bit, but I can't emphasize enough. It needs to be simple, almost point and shoot kind of capability for these devices, these terminals, whatever you want to call it. We can have tier 3 and 4 folks back in the rear who can talk them through it, but it's got to be simple enough for a non-comm guy, non-technical guy to operate on the battlefield.
Okay, thanks. So what we'll do here is switch and take questions from you. So first question, please.
How do we overcome the barriers to information sharing that currently exist between and among Cybercom, DISA, the COCOMs, and services? And is getting to the JIE vision of a data-centric environment with information protection at the data element level the answer?
Who?
You want me to take a stab, at least get it started?
Well,
Or do you want to start?
go ahead, man.
Go ahead, sir.
You jumped all over that one. So,
No, wait.
a lot of people are. I'll stick you in the eye with this pen.
That'll be the first time.
So, a lot of people point and identify all the differences and the friction points that are sitting out there. There's the stones and rocks that are thrown at DISA. There's two types of people in this world, DISA bashers and DISA supporters. There's at least a couple of us up here on the panel who had jobs at DISA. We can do better with coordination, and we are going to do better with coordination. We have no choice but to drive towards an enterprise because we can't afford to do it security-wise or fiscally. We're going to have to get there. So focusing on the data and getting some agreements on where we need to go, we believe is the right thing to do. We need to demonstrate progress in a way that we haven't in the past. Mr. Halverson will be down here tomorrow, and he'll be the first to tell you that this is standing up and doing a lot of stuff. This has got a lot on its plate right now with the joint comms environment for the Pentagon that they're running, with the joint regional security stacks that they're supposed to be running as well, which requires coordination with the services and to get the migrations done and to get people comfortable that they can pull their stuff out and just go behind the regional security stacks. So the quick answer is the coordination isn't good enough. We need to continue to coordinate, and a lot of times the most friction is at the iron major level, where those guys are absolutely married to what they're doing and they can't see the forest through the trees. So when it bubbles up to the old guys and we're sitting around drinking coffee, we can decide, you know, that's not a requirement. We don't need to do that. We can switch a little bit here, or we can yield a little bit and take the correct approach with requirements. If we can get 70 or 80% or 85% now and field it now and revise it and field more a little bit later, we're on to something. But we have got to be comfortable with not going for a perfect score. And I've always been comfortable that way. If I got a perfect score when I was going to school, it means I overtrained. Go ahead, Pete.
Sir, I think you hit on a lot of it already, but it's really, I think it's about the cyber community, the entire cyber community kind of coming together as a team of teams, where we've got a disciplined battle rhythm, we've got shared consciousness amongst all the ops centers, everybody kind of working together with, you know, empowered computer network service providers on the edge that understand what they're, you know, through tiered levels of responsibility. They know what that responsibility is, and they have the authority to take action and do what they need to do on the net because they know they're being backed up by an enterprise that has systems in place to check them and follow up, but allow the troopers on the edge that are providing the capability to be able to do it with a NetOps construct that can work through common, you know, shared understanding between all the ops centers. And it's really about playing team ball. You know, General Bowman, when he was in my seat, used to say, and I was at Disascent, and we ran NetOps, and we were doing it during Buckshot Yankee. We learned a lot of lessons back then, but we realized, you know, the shortest distance between any location is a straight line, and in NetOps reporting, you can't follow a hierarchical reporting chain. It's really about the guy with the information and the blast and common situational awareness, so everybody has the information they need to take the action that they should. And I don't think we're quite there yet. And we got to get to that point where we've got, again, that common understanding of what's going on the networks, a cyber situational awareness capability where our ops centers are all kind of fused and sharing information, and empowered system administrators, network administrators, and cyber professionals out on the edge with the tools they need to deliver capability.
Anybody else want to jump on that? Next question, please.
How comfortable are you with the ability of current systems and software to protect against day one IT attacks?
We just had this discussion upstairs. I'm not. I'm absolutely not. The good part is a lot of it is human error that's causing us to be had. We need to agree upon a set of tools and a set of TTPs that we have out there that are simple to use and effective. And we need to be able to lock onto those tools and not stay married to them. So if we buy tool XYZ and it's the best thing out there for today's threat, but ABC comes out in 3 years, we had to stop, drop, and roll right to ABC. We cannot try to keep getting more out of old tools and use tools that require a PhD to run them. We might have some of those with the high-end teams that come in and help clean us up, but when they leave, so goes the tool and so goes the knowledge on how to do it. And with us, there were some new tools that were added to our network when we got done cleaning it up that we're still learning about. And we will continue to still learn about them. If somebody wants to get into a classified discussion at some point, we can do that. And I can tell you some surprises that we got from some of these tools that caused phone calls in the middle of the night with great panic behind them, but it really wasn't a problem. The tool was doing its job. So Who else wants to jump on that?
I'll jump in. I'm going to link it a little bit back to the question before too about how well we know what we know. I think these two things are very much related. So the Joint Regional Security Stack, I think, is helping move the ball down the field in terms of some commonalities in security and security tools. And so then, as you move into that area, then I think you need to solve some of the tipping and queuing problems. So how do you get the information to the right places out of that security stack? Who needs to know it and how? And then I think there's a need for a broader discussion too about is the regional security stack enough, or do you need to sort of funnel in at certain key locations and then have other security stacks so that you have more of a defense in-depth approach? I think those are some of the questions that we have so that you can use what you can or build out an enterprise. Maybe it's sort of a enterprise security tools picked from that list, share the data, and then figure out how far in do you go with some security. Because as you know, from our standpoint, we know basically we're able to know what's normal and what's not normal on our networks. And some of that tailoring then helps, I think, give you insight in that essay into is something different going on here that I need to know about, and how we share that across then becomes, another part of the puzzle.
But I think you mentioned tools, and certainly tools are important, and we want to leverage the best of breed out there, and industry is providing some great tools. But I think the other realization the department is seeing is we've talked about the network being a weapon system for about 10 years, but that's been about all it is talk, because everybody defaults to convenience, and now I think now that some of these events have occurred, I think we're now seeing senior leaders really embracing the idea of it as a weapon system and imposing some discipline on users, as well as mandating education, real education, not a once a year land cert kind of a capability. So I think we're seeing it evolve to just how we would use, we don't use our weapons, in garrison in a flippant manner. Well, we shouldn't use our network in garrison or on the field in a flippant manner. There's controls and perspectives, and so I think we're making progress on both sides, the tool side as well as the operator side. And it's quite frankly, it's without saying too much, it's going to get even worse. I mean, when you got the very senior leaders saying, I don't care if I inconvenience you a little bit, we're going to have a secure network. That's a pretty powerful statement.
Absolutely, and if you were to do a little research project and look at the three of the largest and most significant intrusions on one of the largest and most secure networks in the world, being the DoD network, the first was agent.btz in 2008, right? This was a USB drive. Shouldn't have plugged that in. The second was Conficker. This was a worm, exploited a vulnerability in Windows 2008 that allowed it to do a dictionary attack. 15.1 million computers in 3 weeks, which means 15.1 million people were using a dictionary word for their password. And the third was the recent intrusion attempt that affected multiple agencies, not just the Joint Staff. That was a phishing attempt. User clicked on a link in email they shouldn't have. In all three cases, user plugged in a USB drive they shouldn't have. User used a password out of the dictionary they shouldn't have. User clicked on a link in email they shouldn't have. In all three cases, the vulnerability, exactly what Lieutenant General Bowman said, was the user. Those are things your IPS and your IDS aren't going to catch right away. And we tend to put a lot of thought and emphasis on our intrusion prevention first and our intrusion detection second. And as Ms. Kelley said, we spend less time thinking about the insider threat that's already there. What are those behavioral analytics that are going to allow us to detect when something's going on in the network that shouldn't? Whether that's a malicious insider or just a stupid user. That's where the threat lies, in my view.
Perfect. Next question, please.
How are you addressing UAVs or drones in support of deployed forces, and are there clear command and control systems coordination to also manage and protect the airspace?
Sure, I'll jump on that. Although I need you to, the first part, I need you to, it was, how are we managing UAVs and drones? Was that the question?
He said addressing. Dear sir, something like that.
So just so everybody knows, you know, it was funny because John said I don't have any drones in my theater down in Southcom. I would tell you about 90% of the ISR, which includes the unmanned aerial vehicles, 90% of the departments are probably operating in CENTCOM. And I would say 90% of those operating in CENTCOM are in support of SOCOM in our theater. So John, you've probably got the best answer for this one, I would imagine.
Well, I know CENTCOM wants the other 10% that they don't have, and we'll use it as well.
Aerial ISR.
I mean, as I talked earlier, we believe that the proliferation of UASs and, quite frankly, manned ISR is just going to continue to grow. All of our commanders have become dependent is a strong word, but I would say that's probably inappropriate for many types of operations. We are dependent on that capability, and so it's going to get bigger. And so we have to address it, I think, holistically as a department. I said earlier, you know, we've sponsored an ICD to build a department-level transport layer for airborne ISR. Because right now, every platform has their own unique ground station. Every platform has their own unique, whether it might be a modem or it might be a different transport capability. And we need to unify that so that those ones and zeros can be put to the, you know, sent to the places where they need to be sent. Whether it's a commander on the ground, whether it's an assaulter getting to hit a target, or it's an intel analyst doing the PED back CONUS for long-term analysis. So we think that's the way to go. There's obviously pushback, you know, in some parts of the department when people, you know, their program they think is okay, they don't need any help. That's that parochial, you know, what's mine is mentality that we can't afford to have anymore. So we need to come holistically together with an airborne ISR transport layer to address the comm portion, the transport portion of UASs. And then the airspace deconfliction portion of the question, I'm going to pass on that.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. I will tell you, our Combined Air Operations Center in Al Udeid, if you have never seen it, there was a special on it the other night on 60 Minutes, and General Brown, our AFCENT commander, really kind of talked through the effort and intensity that they put into the planning of every single mission that goes on. And there's thousands of missions that have happened to counter Daesh or ISIL over the last 16 months or so. And for the most part, you haven't heard a whole lot about collateral damage, about civilian casualties, or about anything else. And that's because we have a lot of ISR, airborne ISR, unmanned aerial vehicles that are being coordinated and managed from that very, very precision-focused Combined Air Ops Center with absolute professionals running it. And the folks that are putting weapons on systems are weaponeering systems based on what they're seeing from these video feeds and this persistent surveillance that's ongoing over all these different targets. So it is being managed, it's being centrally managed, and they're learning as they go and improving every single day. But it's a pretty impressive effort, and it comes with just muscle memory because we've been doing it for quite a while in this region.
Okay, next question, please.
Okay, we have time for one final question, and it is, the U.S. as a Five Eyes nation uses SCIP 230 for secure voice communications, but other NATO nations use a different SCIP version that is not interoperable. What plans are there to work with NATO and NSA to establish interoperable standards within NATO?
Sounds like a Joint Staff J6 question to me.
The wheels on the bus go over and over you. I may have to ask for help on this one. Is Stu Whitehead here?
He's watching Ozzy.
Come on up. Oh, shoot. Okay, I didn't just do that.
Hey, Stu, we're used to that.
So, it's interesting. We spend a lot of time with NATO, and we work really, really hard to get standards that are applicable to all. Our coordination and our efforts with the Five Eyes partners has never been better than what it is today. We can sit at our national secret terminal and send a counterpart in any one of those other nations a note, and they'll receive it on their national secret terminal. We've got chat, we've got video, we've got voice, we've got portal that we're working with them as well. But coordinating inside NATO is hard. We spend a ton of time, and Stu Whitehead is the closest guy to ACT down in Hampton Roads. So he spends a ton of time with those guys too. Bottom line is I don't have a good answer for that question, and if somebody wants to send it to me, I'll get an answer and I'll send it back to you. So I think we're getting the hook because we just swung and missed at that one. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate the questions, and more so we appreciate getting to sit up here together to discuss it. We need to keep our finger on this pulse of interoperability and requirements 100% of the time, because if we're not all talking, we'll end up going down divergent paths and we will not be on the enterprise in the end. This is absolutely critical for all the reasons that you heard up here. Thanks so much.
Well, I think as I listen to this, there are a few takeaways that kind of resonated through most of the presentations here. And one is joint has become a legacy term, and we're really into the interagency coalition as we move forward, and we've got to keep our mindset in that regard. Simplicity is the key. Mission assurance and field something, a capability is good enough, and we'll worry about fixing it later on. Those are the themes that really came through to me. So on behalf of AFCEA and the MILCOM, we're going to make a contribution in support of all wounded warriors and on behalf of the panel members. So thank you all very much. So General Bowman, to all the panel members, again, thank you for joining us today and your remarks. And a sign of our appreciation, I said we will make that contribution. This was the final session of the day. Rest up tonight, and the final day of MILCOM will begin tomorrow, and it's going to be a busy one. We begin breakfast in the exhibit hall at 8 o'clock. We have 2 morning sessions in this room. The final plenary panel begins at 8:30 and will be followed by an address by the DoD CIO, Terry Halverson. Technical program sessions begin at 9, and there'll be 1 final theater session at 11. Then we'll have a final keynote luncheon here in this room at 12:15 when Vice Admiral Mark Fox, Deputy Commander, U.S. Central Command, will be delivering the luncheon address. So please consult your MILCOM app for details on all of tomorrow's content, and enjoy the day. Have a great day, and we'll see you all in the morning, and stay dry on your way out of here. So again, thank you very much to the panel, and thank you for everybody who sat out here this afternoon.
We have a set of values serving as a foundation